Emmett Lewis Till was a 14-year-old African American youth who was abducted and lynched in Mississippi in 1955 after being accused of offending a white woman, Carolyn Bryant, in her family's grocery store. The brutality of his murder and the acquittal of the killers drew attention to the long history of violent persecutions African Americans in the U.S. have faced. So Till posthumously became an icon of the civil rights movement. And so you can see here, he was born Chicago, Illinois, United States. He died in Drew, Mississippi, United States. Cause of death, murder. His height was 5'6". His parents was Mamie Till and Louis Till. And the education that he received during that time he was alive was at James McCosh Elementary School, and it might be other things here, but I am not going to go into it. So there may be some images here, so I have to warn you if the image of him and his death is a little disturbing. I'm sorry for that, but you can see still photos of his mother when she was at the funeral. His mother, how she reacted to the news of his passing, and then you can see the people that are gathered. So I'll click into some of this. Emmett Till's life, lynching, and murder trial in photos. That's Emmett Till. And this is his mother, the lasting power of Emmett Till's image. That's his tombstone. That's his mother, and that is him. And this is a remembering of Emmett Till. This was the legacy of the lynching. The New York Times had posted. And these are the people who were acquitted, the killers. Doesn't look like they feel threatened or they feel sad about what they did or any remorse. They never were held accountable for what they did. And that was printed out of USA Today. This was all here in America. Emmett Till, how a 14-year-old's brutal killing shaped America's civil rights movement. So this is what sparked the civil rights movement. This is the movements that basically are DEI and anything having to do with people of color that they're trying to scrap. Okay, so there's several videos and archives, testimonies of that whole event that occurred. Okay, and the woman who made the alleged accusal, she died. White woman whose accusations led to Emmett Till's lynching in 1955 has died. So this was out of the Independent, and this was back in uh, 2023 of April of the 27th. Okay, so she died. So I'm just kind of going back into time. So the white woman who had originally accused the black teenager, 14-year-old Emmett Till, of making lewd comments about her before he was brutally beaten and killed in Mississippi in 1955, she died. So Carolyn Bryant Donham, 88 years old, was diagnosed with cancer and receiving hospice care in Louisiana. So Calcassias Parish, I may not pronounce that correctly, coroner's office confirmed her death in Mississippi. That was on that day of April the 27th. So Till was kidnapped, tortured, beaten, and shot before his body was tied to a fan blade and weighed down in a river in Mississippi nearly 70 years ago. So the men who killed him were acquitted of all their wrongdoing by an all-white jury, then later admitted to their crimes in a magazine interview a few months later. Both men have also since died. They never were held accountable. Last year, the grand jury in Mississippi, Lefore County, declined to indict Donaham, who was 21 years old when she testified in court that Till made unwanted advances against her. So an unserved warrant that was discovered in the county courthouse basement last year of that time, which I believe is, it looked like that was in 2000s. It says intended to charge her, or maybe intended to charge her and her husband Roy Bryant and brother-in-law. So, but after Till's murder, she was never taken. This was during that time period in the 1960s. So during that time period, she was never taken into custody or charged with any crime in the decades that followed thereafter. So nobody has ever been convicted for originally for Till's death, which galvanized the civil rights movement and attracted nationwide attention for lynchings and racist killings of black Americans, underscoring the brutal legacy of segregation. Let me read that again. Nobody has been convicted for Till's death, which galvanized the civil rights movement and attracted nationwide attention to the lynchings and racist killings of black Americans, underscoring the brutal legacy, not fun, not happy times, brutal legacy of segregation and Jim Crow era violence. Till's mother, Mamie Till Mobley, who died in 2003, was photographed in a defining image at his open casket funeral in Chicago. "I wanted the world to see what they did to my boy," she said at the time. So this was him, and a lot of us are familiar with this photo, those of us that know about the story. Last March, President Joe Biden signed the Emmett Till Lynching Act into law. Now this is in our time, Joe Biden. All those years, think about it, that passed, that law was signed in as an act. In the 2000s, this crime happened in Let's go back up. 1955, not even the 60s. I was wrong. So that's a long time to finally get any type of justice whatsoever in any shape, form, or fashion for this killing, this brutal killing, okay? And so this was in Joe Biden's time, which is our time we're living in. These people, most of all of them, are dead now. They'll never see this. We see this. Black Americans today see this. Okay, so from the bullets, okay? So it says, last March, President Joe Biden signed the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act. So Think about that. It took all this time. Anti-lynching. What does that mean? That means that could have still and still goes on and still have gone on, and it flies under the radar. What did we see in some of the videos that were cropping up of missing black men being by a tree, and they're calling it suicide, but they find a rope next to them and it's unexplained. They don't know how the person died, and they rule it out as an accidental death or a suicide. So in our time, Joe Biden finally signed the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act into law, making lynching a federal hate crime, more than a century after such legislation was first introduced. So from the bullets in the back of Ahmaud Arbery, which is in our time, and those of us that know about that story, we saw it all over the news, to countless acts of violence, countless victims, both known and unknown, racial hate is not an old problem. It isn't a long time ago. So it's a persistent problem, and the president said in a signing ceremony at the White House that year, hate never goes away. It only hides. It hides under the rocks. Given just a little bit of oxygen, it comes roaring back out, screaming. So what stops it all? All of us? Not a few. So the law designates lynching as a crime punishable by up to 30 years in prison. So it passed a House of Representatives vote by 433 to 7. Okay, 433 to 7, and cleared the U.S. Senate by a unanimous consent. So in February of the year, Till's cousin Priscilla Sterling filed a federal lawsuit against LaFleur County Sheriff Ricky Banks, pressuring him to serve the 1955 warrant for Donna Ham's arrest. Okay, earlier that month, his attorney asked a judge to dismiss the suit. So what does that tell you about that? This is in our time, okay? So that's kind of my way of making up for the video that didn't really come out well, but it kind of also lets you know that the hate that was so persistent then is still around us now, has never really disappeared. Okay, so this article was put out during that time where they acknowledged what was going on. This was in 2023, April 27th. But the crime happened in 1955, and in our time, Joe Biden, let's go back to this. He put an act into law, and then they finally signed the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act. This is in our time. Decades passed. And that's about as close to justice that these people who now, they're never going to see this. Probably their grandkids see it. This is when they get their justice. Think about it.